Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello and welcome back. What if I told you that you don't have a potential problem, you have a capacity problem, and that is potentially limiting everything? So put yourself in this place. You've got everything mapped out. You know you're capable of more, but you can't seem to find the internal space, the bandwidth, the time, the energy, the capacity to actually access what you know that you are capable of, right? You feel that there's more for you. I can do more. I can achieve more. I can accomplish more. I know how to do these things. I just can't seem to stack the pieces in place to organize my days, organize my life, to prioritize the things that I need or would want to prioritize to actually make it happen. And I think that we've all been here if we're honest, right? If you're really truthful about reflecting, put yourself in that place, whether it's where you're at right now or somewhere that you've been before. I think we've all been there. We know that our potential exceeds our capacity or our ability to execute. But because of the fact that we have too much on our plate, because our focus is scattered, because of the emotional heaviness of the thing, because of the mental energy and bandwidth required, whatever it is, because of all of these very real factors, we are limited. We shortchange ourselves. We set our goals lower. We don't achieve our goals. We give up before we reach the finish line. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what I call the capacity crisis. We're going to talk about the fact that you have more potential. It's just that you don't right now have enough space. You don't have enough space physically. You don't have enough space mentally, emotionally. And so we're going to unpack what that actually looks like. We're going to explore the emotional load. We're going to explore cognitive bandwidth. We're going to look at energy leakages. We're going to talk about how to reclaim your capacity so that you can actually maximize your capacity. Because what I would argue is that your problem isn't a lack of potential, it's a lack of space to express your potential, specifically the potential that you already have. So this is not about doing more or being someone else or being someone different or being better even. It is about maximizing what you already have access to. It's just that all this other stuff is getting in the way. And so we're going to talk about that today, and you're going to walk away with a very clear roadmap, a framework that I've built that I think is really going to help you understand what it looks like and what it actually feels like in practice to go out and really align your actions with your full capacity. So let's start with what the capacity crisis is. What is this concept or this idea that I think manifests itself in a very real way? But what does it actually look like in practice? And so, as always, I want you to put yourself in this place. I want you, as I'm breaking down what this actually is, what the capacity crisis is, I want you to think about, are any of these things represented in your life, or have you felt this way? Firstly, there is the cognitive load component of the capacity crisis. So you have too many decisions to make. And what that equals is that you have very real decision fatigue. Your brain always feels scattered. You're running in a million different directions. It's hard to focus on the right thing, the best thing, the highest and best use of your time. Next comes the multitasking piece. So there is fragmented attention because there are lots of things going on. There are lots of things that need your attention, that require your bandwidth. You want to try to get to all of them, and you might be doing that well, but what that feels like from a cognitive perspective is that your attention is always in lots of different areas. You don't feel like you have that space, that time, that energy for deep work, for creative work, for new ideas, for thought, to sit with something for any period of time to actually understand, is this the best solution? Is this the best idea? Are there new possibilities here? You don't know. You can't get there because of the very real cognitive load. Next, we have emotional load. So again, with this crisis that we're talking about today, the crisis of capacity, there's an emotional load component. So you're carrying unresolved stress, the stress of a million different decisions, of things that went right, of things that went wrong, of things that you could have or should have maybe done differently, the stress of everyday life, the stress of work, the stress of your goals. All of this is stacking. And this creates a very real emotional load because you don't have the time and energy and bandwidth to process any of this. And so it just sits dormant, and it stacks and it stacks and it creates very real emotional load. Next is you're holding everyone else's needs. Because you don't feel like you have the time and energy to actually sit with these things or have the conversations that need to be had, or to help individuals become the best versions of themselves, because you're trying to work on becoming the best version of yourself, or rather just fit in the time needed to do the baseline things that you have to do and check the boxes, you hold on to everyone else's needs. And that creates very real stress, very real emotional load. And next, and I think most prevalent, and the one that I imagine that so many of you will connect with the most, is that there is this chronic low-grade anxiety and tension. So maybe you are not an anxious person. Maybe you are someone who doesn't feel like you're particularly anxious, but you do recognize that there is this chronic undertone, this chronic low-grade tension, this feeling that you just can't quite get out from behind the eight ball. That if there could just be another hour in the day, if there could just be one less thing to do, one less new thing that comes in, that would actually just create a space where finally it felt like you could breathe. And so, again, with the emotional load, there is this chronic low grade tension or anxiety. Then we have what I call an energetic leakage. Now, I know that might not sound particularly good as a phrase, but I want you to really connect with that. What that is that there's just all of these things that are happening that you're taking ownership over or are doing that just slowly drain your energy, right? It's like there's a tiny pinprick in the whole of your ship, and slowly but surely the energy is leaking away because of all of these different pinpricks. And what that can look like is that you're doing tasks that you shouldn't be doing. You're taking ownership for things that are not yours to own. You're doing things because of a lack of trust, because it feels like it could be the faster way, it could be the more efficient way, because you don't have time or energy to communicate what's actually needed or how to do that well. And so you just take it on. You're maintaining relationships that drain you rather than support you. So you stick with these relationships because it's the easier thing to do, because you really don't have time or energy emotionally or physically to really cross that bridge per se. And so you just think you'll do it later. Or it's easier to stick with it and be drained of energy than to actually pursue relationships that support you and prop you up and help you be best version of yourself. And next is that you are constantly switching contexts. So you see your world as one that is siloed, right? It is the work version of yourself. It is the athletic version of yourself. It is the family version. It's the business version. It's the person who tries to focus on themselves and fill their cup when they can, if they're able. But all of these things are in different scenarios and different contexts and different places in your life. There's not a cohesive environment that you operate in. And so all of this creates different contexts, which when we switch from context to context to context, from silo to silo to silo, it creates an incredible amount of energy leakage. Lastly, we have the identity load. So you're trying to manipulate or multiply versions of yourself all at once, right? You're trying to be multiple versions of who you think could show up best in this space. Again, this largely comes from the constant context switching. Again, you have the work version of you, and then the family version, and then the this version, and the that version. And all of that gets parsed out and creates a really incredible strain on our sense of self, on our identity. And that creates this crisis, and it requires a tremendous amount of capacity to navigate or to try to navigate all of those different identities. To that end, we have outdated self-concepts. So these things that are taking up valuable space as it relates to how we think about ourselves. I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. I am this person, I'm not that person. I'm good in these spaces, I'm not good in those spaces. I show up well here, I don't have time for that. I do this well, I don't do that, right? Whatever that looks and feels like for you, we hang on to these outdated self-concepts that take up a tremendous amount of bandwidth. And so all of those things stack, those four areas. To recap quickly, we have the identity load, we have that energetic leakage, we have the emotional load, the cognitive load. That's what makes up the capacity crisis. It's those four areas that create what it is that's getting in our way. And all of those pieces manifest themselves differently in different ways, in different capacities, and different volumes at different times in our days, in our weeks, in our month, and ultimately our lives. And what I like to think about when I imagine these four areas in competition with one another and in competition with me on any given day as I try to elevate my capacity and grow as a person is that I recognize that you can't access next level performance with last year's bandwidth. I want you to think about that. You can't access next level performance with last year's bandwidth, meaning that you can't be who you need to be, who you can be, who you're meant to be with an old version of yourself, with last year's tools, with last season's bandwidth, with last season's way of thinking. And so there's an opportunity for an upgrade. Let's talk about how the lack of capacity shows up. So before I provide a framework and give you some tools to really solve this, I want you to hear how a lack of capacity actually shows up and how I promise you it is impacting. Because I also guarantee that there are people listening to this right now that are saying, yeah, I hear that, but I'm doing this well. That doesn't apply to me. I know some other people that struggle to navigate those silos, that struggle to navigate that emotional, physical, cognitive load. I know some other people that when they're in that place, yeah, it certainly impacts them, but not me. I'm good at it. And so I want to highlight what it actually looks like when this capacity crisis shows up in your life. And I want you to be brutally honest with yourself as you're listening to this and recognize which one of these are you, because it's not if, but which. So firstly is that everything feels harder than it should. Your effort is high, but your output is low. You're doing a lot. So I'm not minimizing the effort required. I'm not minimizing how you show up. But if you're really honest, for the effort that you're putting in, the output is actually low. The output of both your own work, but also maybe those around you, right? You're not pulling in the right people into your sphere. Everything feels harder. There's more lack of cohesion than you would like there to be, both with yourself as well as others. So everything feels harder than it should. It's like, this is an uphill battle. This used to feel easy. I thought this was going to be a simple win. I thought this was going to be low-hanging fruit, but it's not. It's harder than it should be. Next is you know what to do, but you can't act consistently. So your execution is lagging behind your intention. You know what needs to be done. You can see the roadmap clearly, as most high performers can, but your ability to execute is lagging. Maybe it's not happening at all, or maybe it's far behind. This can happen in lots of realms. You know what needs to be done to get in shape, but your execution lags far behind your intention. You know what needs to be done to move the needle in your career, your family, your friendships, your relationships, but you're not putting in the work. And it's not because you can't see the work that's required. It's because it just feels so heavy. It feels so impossible to imagine doing the work necessary to move the needle in that particular area or all of those areas at some times. Next is that you live in a constant fog or a sense or feeling of overwhelm. So all of the mental clutter that I described earlier makes even simple tasks feel heavy. Doing something that should feel normal or easy or light feels exhausting or heavy or weighted because there is so much going on. Again, this kind of constant fog or sense of overwhelm that takes even these simple things, but because those simple things are stacked on top of all of these other pieces, all of the cognitive load, all of the identity crisis, all of the bandwidth issues, all of the decision fatigue, because all of that still exists, then that starts to create mental clutter. And even those simple tasks feel heavy. Next is you have irritation, or you are irritated or detached. So emotionally, maybe you're short-fused. Maybe you're numb, right? You become irritated at simple things. You become irritated at normal, everyday things. Whether that's things that you're navigating or whether that's things that other people are doing around you, it feels like you have a short fuse. You don't have the energy to navigate normal, everyday things. So you're emotionally numb, you have a short fuse, and ultimately that creates detachment. Because those things are frustrating, because those things are hard to navigate, because it feels like another layer on your already extremely stacked pile, you start to pull yourself away from those things because you don't have the energy, the ability, the capacity to actually navigate that. Next, as we get into avoidance behavior. So you procrastinate on meaningful work because the emotional lift feels too big. You're going for easy wins because doing the real work that you know you need to do or that you would actually be excited about, but because, again, there's this emotional bandwidth component, this emotional load, because that's very real, you start to be avoidant. Procrastination is easier than actually stepping up to that meaningful work because you know that the emotional load, that lift, is going to be too big. So we see this manifest all the time. I want to give you a few examples just really quickly. In the athletic realm, we see this manifest as an athlete that might be fit, but they have no focus. They're just kind of floundering. And they don't have focus because they recognize that to focus, that to set goals, that to chase an improved version or to chase an increased capacity of who they are right now requires so much energy that they sideline themselves. They might maintain, but they're not growing, they're not pushing. It's a business owner who knows what their next step is, but burns tons and tons of time doing admin work. Right? The person who knows what needs to happen. They know they need to sink their teeth into the strategy or the growth or hiring or connecting or pursuing other opportunities, but it's easier to hide in the admin work because that doesn't require the emotional bandwidth. And it's times when we have low capacity, but we tell ourselves that it is because of low motivation. So we actually make that mean something about us. And I'm here to tell you that when your capacity shrinks, even your strengths start to feel like weaknesses. Because everything starts to feel so heavy. You also are not thriving at any one particular thing. And so you start to get down on yourself because the things that you used to be good at feel like things that you are bad at, feel like weaknesses. And so, again, when your capacity shrinks, even your strengths start to feel like weaknesses. So I want to take it one step deeper because I want this to really resonate with our audience. And I want to talk about why the capacity crisis hits high performers the hardest. First is that high performers normalize overload. And so all of these things that I've described, the scenario that I've mapped out for you, this stacking and cognitive load and identity crisis and decision fatigue and emotional numbness, all of these things tend to be the ecosystem and environment where high performers live. All of these things are part of the ecosystem that high performers can thrive in. So we tell ourselves, I can handle it. This is not anything particularly new. I know this space. I know what this feels like. I can navigate it. And while that might be the truth, you're not prospering. Right? You might be navigating it. You might be able to handle it. But can it be a time period of maximized potential? Are there opportunities for a tweak? And that's what I'm offering up today. Next, why does it hit high performers the hardest? You mistake resilience for unlimited bandwidth. Again, you have built these skills. High performers understand how to navigate and take on more than most people. What high performers do on a normal day would crush other people. So, with that comes a very high degree of resilience. But there's a tipping point, and we mistake that resilience for an unlimited amount of bandwidth. And so much so that being strong actually becomes a liability. Because you have so much resilience, because you can take on more than other people, oftentimes, you've made that mean that you have unlimited bandwidth. And that's not true for any of us. Next is that most high performers over-index on the doing part and under-index on the clearing part. Right? What do I mean by that? I mean that you typically will get to a place where doing is your measure of success, output, execution. I think anybody listening to this podcast, if you would identify or see yourself as a high performer or someone who is just driven and motivated, you certainly put a premium on doing. But we under-index on clearing. And what I mean by that is clearing space, creating bandwidth, taking things off of our plate so that we can add more of the right things onto our plate. And so because the doing piece holds so much weight, we actually don't take any time or very little time to clear, to create space, to create new bandwidth, to create new neural pathways that allow us to focus on different things or cue into new opportunities that might be divergent from the ways that we've been thinking. Next is that your environment reinforces the problem. So why, again, do high performers get hit the hardest with this? Is because the environment that you operate in reinforces all of these scenarios. People expect you to always take on more because you have, and in theory, you can. But again, there's a tipping point. There has to be a clearing process, what I spoke to just a minute ago. So because people expect you to always take on more, you do. You think that that's your role. That's the value you bring. You can do it, so you should do it, and you keep doing it. We keep stacking, we keep stacking, we keep stacking. There's a key psychological piece to this, though, that makes a huge difference as we think about the capacity crisis. And it's that the brain's executive function collapses when our emotional load is too high. That leads to stalled progress. Even when your motivation is high, you literally can't move forward. There is a point of diminishing returns. And again, that executive function collapses when the emotional load is too high, when we keep stacking, when we're not clearing. And even though you might be motivated and driven and clear, you won't be able to get out from under that at a certain point. So with that in mind, let's talk about an expansion opportunity. What I want to talk about is a framework that I've built that I believe can expand your capacity. And my hope is that this gives you tangible tools and something that you can really walk away with some in a way that allows you to start to move the needle, specifically in a way that feels attainable. Because I recognize that when we're talking about these scenarios, there are things that are immovable. There are things that you are not willing to change. You're not able to change. That's okay. I'm not advocating that you make a wholesale change or that everything needs to be scrapped. What I'm advocating is that, one, we recognize that there is a capacity crisis. Two, that we recognize that there's diminishing returns at some point. You cannot continue to just take on more. You do not have unlimited capacity. And that 3, there are some lightweight things that we can do to continue to operate at a very, very high level in the environments that we are in that are largely fixed and immovable, but also recognize that in those environments, there is an opportunity to actually increase our capacity with the right things so that we can do better work. And so the framework that I want to talk about is the Breathe framework. That's BREATH. And it's the Breathe framework for expanding capacity. Let's go through it. The B, boundaries. And I want to give you very clear tactical guidance that you can start on this week. So I'm going to talk about this in the present tense. B stands for boundaries, and you're going to say no to one thing this week. So just start easy. What's one thing you can say no to? Start with a light duty task. Start with a meeting that doesn't need to be on your calendar. Start with a workout that's not adding value, that's actually stressing you more than bringing value or energizing you. What's one thing you can say no to this week? The next piece is I want you to define your non-negotiables. I've talked about this on previous podcast episodes. Non-negotiables are something I believe very strongly in. But what these are the immovable parts of your life. These are the things you're willing to fight for. Right? Creating time and space with your family, doing work that you care about, creating more value for the world than you're asking for. These are high-level, big, vision-based non-negotiables. So these are not, even tactically, these are not, I'm going to work out every day. That's a good goal. That's a great priority. That's not a non-negotiable. A non-negotiable for you in that scenario would sound like, I show up for myself first so that I can pour into others and be the person that I need to be, that has the capacity, the space, the energy to actually create the impact in the world that I want. Right? That's actually one of mine, and that's what my non-negotiable sounds like. So I want you to define your non-negotiables. You're going to have no more than 3 to 5. Right? This is not a long rolling list of the things you care about. These are the things you're willing to fight for every day, every week, so that you can build a life that you're excited about. Right? And even if your schedule is fixed, you don't have control over certain parts, you don't, whatever, X, Y, and Z. I get all of that. Everyone should have non-negotiables, and I promise you have more autonomy than you think. If you feel like you don't have autonomy, it's because you're not clear on your non-negotiables and you're not fighting like hell to make them happen. Next, the R in the Breathe framework, remove friction. So next, eliminate low-value tasks. You are spending your time doing things that are not worth your time and energy. Maybe they don't need to be done at all. Maybe they need to be delegated. Maybe they need to be pushed. Maybe they need to be moved to a different season. Whatever that is, eliminate low-value tasks. There's a lot of junk that is taking up capacity. I want you to do an audit of your schedule, your calendar, your to-do list. I want you to eliminate low-value tasks, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself and others. Next, to that end, I want you to automate or delegate one thing. So automation, can you use a tool? Is there a resource that you can deploy that would allow you to automate? And here's the thing. You're going to say, well, if I automate it, it's not going to be done as well as I do it. Fair enough. The rule of thumb is if it can be done 80% as good as you do it, automate it. Right? Perfection is not the goal. So if you can automate that thing and get 80% as good as you're doing it right now, automate it. Next, if it's something you can delegate, if you have people around you, it doesn't have to be team related. It could be family, it could be children. What is something you can delegate? A thing that's taking up time, space, and energy that you can communicate with others about what support would look like if they took that thing. Next, the E in the Breathe framework. You're going to emotional clearing. Right? What I talked about earlier. We're going to do some emotional clearing. This can come in lots of different ways, whatever way connects with you. Journal, talk it out, go for a walk and process things. Don't listen to music while you're working out. Use that as a time to process. Go for a walk. Don't take your phone. right? Whatever that is, I need you to take some time to process what's going on. Get clear on the things that are taking up space in your brain. Don't carry yesterday into tomorrow. All right, I love this. I love this phrase. Don't carry what happened yesterday into tomorrow, meaning we want to make sure that there's clearing. We have to make space so that we come into tomorrow with a new mindset, with the ability to see new opportunities, to communicate effectively. So you got to create some space to clear things out, right? If you got a closet in your house, you can't just keep stacking stuff in there. Eventually, it will be full and you'll go have to find a new closet. So what I'm asking you to do is to clear your closet out, create some space, and whatever process works for you to do some emotional clearing. The A in the Breathe framework, attention management. We're going to get down to some single tasking. You're not going to multitask everything. Not everything needs to be scattered. Not everything needs to be a million things all at once. Not everything is a top priority. Some things you're doing, you're letting take the place of and fill the space of more important priorities because it feels good to knock those things out. We're going to get back to some single tasking. I want you to prioritize focused windows. Those focused windows can be for anything you want: work, exercise, family, preparing meals. You have to carve those out. Not everything needs to be a multitasking environment. There is time for that. But during your focus windows, in alignment with your non-negotiables, I'm going to encourage you to make sure that those are single tasking instances. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 10 hours, but you need to have some focused windows. A specific action that I'm going to encourage you to take as it relates to your attention management is to turn off one source of noise during this time period. You can turn off your phone, your computer, silence your messages, turn off the music that you usually listen to. One source of noise. Start small and try to layer in what it actually looks and feels like to have focused time and energy. The T in the Breathe framework. You're going to get your time back. So I want you to schedule 15 minutes of unstructured space daily. And just see how that feels. See what you do with that space and time. What's your natural default? It's going to be hard, I promise you. You are going to feel anxious. You're going to feel antsy. You're not going to know what to do with your hands. But just listen to yourself. Right? Schedule 15 minutes of unstructured space daily and lean into that time. You go for a walk. Do you want to sit for a second? Close your eyes, reflect, breathe. What I've found is that you will, once you get over the anxiety of not knowing what to do with your hands and feeling like you're wasting time, that will be your most productive time of the day. You will have a flood of ideas. Again, that cognitive function starts to return when we create some space. This is part of that clearing process. So all the stuff you're wrestling with, you're grappling with, you can't figure out the issues, those things will start to become clear. Next, finally, the H in the Breathe framework, habit simplification. Stop over-engineering everything. Not every routine needs to be a complex, convoluted, 14-step process to optimization. Some things need to be simple. What I would recommend you do is I'd recommend you pick 1 to 2 high-impact habits that you think you can stick to every day. We are in a world that has overcomplicated what's required to be our best. Right? The complex morning routines, the complex time during work, the complex wind down routines for sleep, the complex stress relievers, the complex supplement routines, the complex exercise routines. All of these things are adding more junk to your brain. Some of them are helpful, by all means. Layer in the things that are valuable. I'm not advocating that any of those things necessarily is wrong or bad. What I am saying is that when they start to add more stress than value, they are overcomplicated. So what I want you to do is I want you to simplify your habits. Stop over engineering your routines. Pick 1 to 2 high impact things that you can focus on daily, not 10. Because what happens when we pick too many and when we fail because they are overly complex and convoluted and it doesn't make sense for our life, then we get down on ourselves, right? And so that actually creates a spiral where instead of doing 1 to 2 really positive things every day, we do 0. Because we tried to do 10, we flew too close to the sun, we shot for the stars, we missed, now we suck. We get down on ourselves, and so it creates a spiral. So I want you to simplify your habits. Next is, let's talk about the capacity audit. Let's do a little bit of reflection here to understand what an assessment could look like or can look like to actually take charge of this. So listen to me. I want you to do this in real time. If you have something to write with, if not, fast forward back to around the 40-minute mark in this podcast, and I want you to do this audit. I'm going to ask you to rate each of these things 1 to 10. And I want you to be honest. Firstly, cognitive space, 1 to 10. What's your cognitive space right now? Your ability to take on more, your ability to think critically, your ability to process and be creative, your ability to communicate effectively. What's your cognitive space, 1 to 10? Next, emotional bandwidth, 1 to 10. What's your ability to take on complex and nuanced emotional scenarios, to process that for yourself as well as others, to show up for the people in your life emotionally in the way that you need to? 1 to 10. Energy availability, 1 to 10. How much energy do you have? How much do you have to give? Are you completely maxed out? Is there time and space for more? Do you feel like you can give your energy to the things that you want? Maybe you're given plenty of energy to work, but you have 0 energy for yourself, for exercise, for mental, emotional health. So what's your energy availability? Next, time flexibility. How much flexibility do you have in your time? Are you overly mapped out to the hilt? Is every single day structured? Now, don't get me wrong. I live and breathe and die by my calendar. I think that your calendar represents the things that you value. I think that you need to be nearly maniacal in how you think about structuring your time and energy. But too much structure, too much clinging to that creates stress. It creates a capacity issue because we think more about how that's getting done than actually doing the work. So I want you to think about your time flexibility. Do you have some time and space, right? To just spend freely and openly with your friends, with your kids, with your partner, to cook dinner, to write some space that allows you to just clear a little bit of that away. Next, rate it 1 to 10. Environmental support. Do you have the support that you need from the places and people around you, the environment that you're in, to take full advantage of your capacity, to expand or extend your capacity? What support are you getting from your environment? And lastly, rate 1 to 10. What's your clarity as it relates to your identity? Do I know who I'm becoming? Am I becoming someone who's stressed and over leveraged and maxed to the hilt with no time and energy for the things that I care about? Am I becoming someone who is hampered from reaching their full potential because they don't have the time and space in the day to actually just think about what that does, or what it can look like, or to how to solve those problems, or how to explore different opportunities, different ways of thinking? What's your clarity around your identity? Again, do I know who I'm becoming? I want you to answer those 1 to 10 clearly, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And then I want you to ask yourself, which score is pulling all of the others down? Here's the thing, like I mentioned earlier, these things are not happening in silos. This is you moving through the world, trying to do all of the things that you want and need to do and be representative of your full potential and to reach your full capacity. But some of these are impacting all of the other ones. So, with that in mind, you're going to ask yourself which score is pulling all of the others down. Then here's the tactical piece. Your lowest score becomes your area to focus on this week. If you're listening to this podcast as it's just released, it's early in the week. You still have time. So, your lowest score becomes your focus this week. Do this audit consistently. Come back to it. If you need to come back to it every week, every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, put it on your calendar, come back to it. What's working, what's not. Use what's not to set your priorities for the week. How do you increase that? And if you're rated one area 2, I don't want you to focus on what can I do to get it to a 10? What can you do to move it one number? If you put one area as a 2, what can you do to move it to a 3? Incremental, small action stack over relatively short periods of time to make really meaningful results. So use this audit. Use the audit, tie that back into the framework that I gave you, the breathe framework. Like I said, I want this to be real and I want it to be something you can implement into your life. So lastly, I'm going to leave you with a few questions. A couple of just final things to reflect on while you put the audit into play, while you implement and deploy the breathe framework. I want you to think about, where is my capacity leaking? Where is the leakage coming from? And how can I work to plug the holes? Next, what am I carrying that isn't mine? What am I taking false responsibility or ownership for? Let me get rid of that. Lastly, what would become possible if you just had 20% more internal space? 20% more internal capacity. What could you get done? If you're maxed out now and you're getting all these things done, what would happen if you just free up a little bit of space? Again, it's not a wholesale change. I'm not asking you to change everything. Create small pockets for space so that you can maximize your capacity. So I'm going to remind you, I'm going to leave you with this. Your greatest performance gains won't come from doing more. They'll come from creating space to become more. I'll say that one more time. Your greatest performance gains won't come from doing more. They'll come from creating space to become more. We all have a limited capacity. Our capacity is finite based on any number of external scenarios, internal scenarios. And so I don't want you to focus on doing more. I want you to focus on creating space to actually just maximize what you have. That's going to make a huge difference. It's going to feel like a much more enjoyable process. So, as always, I hope this was helpful. I truly hope, I want you to try these things on. Use the audit, use the breathe framework. Ask yourself these reflection questions. Start to put this in action. Small, repeatable things, they stack and they make substantial differences and an impact over time. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll put this into play in your own life to maximize your capacity so that you can undo the capacity crisis that's going on with so many of us, specifically high performers in the environments that we operate in. This has become the norm, but there's an opportunity for an upgrade, I promise you. As always, you can reach out to us on enduranceMinded.com. Let us know what's going on. We'd love to hear from you. Our community is so impactful. We've had another incredible year. We're gearing up for next year, and it's going to be another great one. We're moving into our 7th year of Endurance Minded. I can't believe it. It's been one of the greatest joys of my life, and I continue to stay committed to this podcast and to our community. Thank you all so much. With that in mind, before the close of the year, I'm going to ask you one thing. I'm going to ask you to rate this podcast on your favorite platform. I'm going to ask you to subscribe so that you can be alerted. New podcast episodes get released every other Tuesday. And then share this episode or your favorite with a friend that you think would find value in it. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again. I'm grateful. I'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.